evening and good to have you with us in this edition of the Urban Debate. We continue with the big focus of the Pegasus project and the politics and the row around it. We're also going to put the spotlight on what's happening across the world. India is not the only country that has been hit by these stories of the part of Pegasus project. Several other nations are included. Several other clients of Pegasus are allegedly linked to these stories, and those databases have also now been put out. So if we had to tell you what's happening across the world, France has already ordered an investigation. A criminal complaint was filed by one of the media houses there, whose name was also on this target list. President Macron called for an emergency security meeting, and the government there has said they are going to investigate the allegations that have emerged. Israel itself has also called for a group and a panel to look into these allegations that are being made. Big reactions really coming in from across the world. But here in our country, our government is yet to take a decision on any official probe. In fact, if anything, our government has gone on to continue and dismiss all of these stories outright, linking it to a conspiracy to malign the image of our country. Now, what added fuel to this fire, what added a little bit of impetus to the BJP and the government's argument in the first half today, emerged actually and started actually from a tweet that was put out by an Israeli journalist who had actually picked up Amnesty International's press release or statement, which was in Hebrew, and accordingly put out a series of tweets, in a sense saying that even Amnesty is not saying this is NSO's list. Even Amnesty and other organizations are not directly saying that this list of potential targets for snooping or surveillance have anything to do with NSO. And that triggered a massive conversation and debate in the first half. This was also used by several here in our country to dismiss these reports. But Amnesty International itself has come out with a clarification and a detailed statement saying that it stands by the stories that have come out. It stands with the fact that these are numbers from a leaked database of customers or clients of the NSO who are intending to use Pegasus or perhaps did use Pegasus on these numbers. So Amnesty standing by, to the point where even this journalist has now corrected himself and saying, Amnesty says that there was some problem in terms of interpretation of their Hebrew communication. But here in our country, the political debate rages on. Through the day again, there was much chaos, much sloganeering, protests in our parliament. Lower house and upper house were constantly interrupted, Pegasus being one of the issues, to the point when our minister was addressing the Rajya Sabha, giving his statement on this story, there was so much ruckus that the House had to be adjourned for tomorrow. To the point that allegedly a group of TMC MPs barged in to the well and then towards the minister himself, took those papers and tore them apart. Now there is a contemplation if any action privilege motion needs to be moved against these MPs. So all of this drama is really going on. But what about the actual stories, and what about any intent to find the truth behind them? As we all read one after the other, as fresh revelations and claims are made, one can only wonder what is the truth to it, and can we as a country today afford to outrightly reject and dismiss these reports that talk about intentions to snoop not only on journalists of this country, but activists, but those linked to the Election Commission, ministers, sitting ministers, their aides in the center, in the state? Can we really afford to be that kind of a nation? I say good evening to the panelists who are joining us on this conversation. Tuhin Sinha of the BJP, Gurdeep Singh Sappal of the Congress Party, Jagdeep Chokar, co-founder of ADR, Association of Democratic Reforms, Mr. Desh Ratan Nigam, lawyer with the Supreme Court. But first up, I want to go across to the founding editor of The Wire, Mr. M.K. Venu. Mr. Venu, one more time, can you explain to us and to our viewers this list that is at the heart of Pegasus project? What is this list exactly, especially in the light of all this now back and forth that has happened with NSO statements and amnesty statement?
See, Tanvi, I'll just begin by, I just heard the Israeli journalist that you were quoting. I heard him on TV, and he said two things. and we must pay attention to what he said. He said he knows about the work of Citizens Lab, the Citizen Lab Toronto, and he says that their work is authentic. And he also said that the forensics conducted so far in the few cases, 37 total, by Amnesty Lab under the protocols established by the Citizen Lab. He said he fully believes that and he fully endorses that. And he also says that Pegasus infection has happened. The only thing that he expresses doubt over is whether the entire list of 50,000 are Pegasus, targeted for Pegasus. That's the only thing he doubts. And he says he doesn't know. He says that has to be established. So, and subsequently comes Amnesty International's clarification that they fully stand by the Pegasus project. So what I'm saying, Tanvi, is people must have patience. We are still testing the phones, right? Now, you cannot have all the phones tested. People are apprehensive. You can only get samples in the beginning. And media also works with limited resources. So the government must hold and should not just dismiss the entire effort by media of 16 countries as fake and as null and void and as something that is a conspiracy against India. You know, this is not about India. I want to submit this even to the BJP member. This is not about the BJP government. This is not about Modi or Amit Shah. This is a global problem. This is a problem about Pegasus. This is a global problem about a lethal spyware which is impacting democracies around the world. France has ordered an inquiry. France is not saying that there is an international conspiracy against France, that there is a attempt to destabilize. So India should behave like a confident democracy, like France is behaving. And I agree. If the government is saying we have not done it, for a moment I agree government has not done it. But Modi and Amit Shah are responsible for the running of the government, right? For governance, especially on national security. So why don't they, if it is not the government, then somebody else has done it. It is established that some Pegasus infection has happened in some phones in India. So why don't they order an inquiry? Why are they shying away? If they are so sure that they've not done it, why don't they do it? Yesterday, some senior lawyers like Siddharth Luthra, who's worked with this government, very close to Arun Jaitley, he said very clearly, he was on a panel with me, he said, if the government has not done it, then whoever has done it, it is illegal. So the police case should be filed, can be filed, Supreme Court can be moved, inquiry can be demanded. So why doesn't government preempt all this and just set up an inquiry? Be confident. Be confident that this is a global problem and Modi ji should be part of a solution of this global problem. That's what I'm saying. That's my limited point.
No, you're absolutely right. In fact, what you pointed out about the Israeli journalist also, I think he spoke to you also after that. He's also publicly now said that was wrongly quoted because of maybe some translation issues as well. And he too believes that there is merit into looking into it. So that part I wanted to highlight to our viewers that, if you got a whiff of this entire narrative early in the morning saying that even Amnesty doesn't stand by their story, that's incorrect. Amnesty does. The Israeli journalist who first pointed it out and it went viral across the world also now agrees that it may have been wrongly interpreted. So that part is one. The second part, Mr. Venu, before I go to our other panelists, is also what the government's response and even the BJP's response has been so far. And a big part of their argument is that the publishing media organizations such as yourself say that, there needs to be further investigation. You need high level of technology to find out the details, if at all there was surveillance done. But there is also a part in many of your stories which says that you guys did carry out, along with this entire group, a test on a few of these numbers, including some from India. And you did find traces of Pegasus there. Is that correct?
Yeah, we tested some 21 phones, and these are authentic tests whose credibility has been established, and the Israeli journalist was also endorsing it. So out of 21, 10 have been found to be infected. Mine, for instance, been found to be infected. My co-founder Siddharth Varadarajan found to be infected. Prashant Kishore's has been found to be infected. So there is a sample. There, Edward Snowden has tweeted, I think today or yesterday, that in a small sample, there is a 50% strike rate, right? So out of 20 or 21, 10 have been found to be infected. Now, of this sample, there only 13 were iPhones. Now, apparently, this doesn't work so well on Android. So if you take just the iPhone numbers, out of 13, 10 or 9, that's a much higher strike rate, 70% strike rate. So my contention is, at this stage, Tanvi, with our kind of resources, only a limited sample can be tested. It's like a limited survey being done to determine, the mood of the voters, or to determine whatever, to determine any health survey or any other survey. So my contention is, the government has all the resources at its command. Why doesn't it invite the Citizens Lab from Canada, which is an authentic research outfit, and conduct a larger survey? I think I agree. Everybody should hand over their phones. BJP says that Rahul Gandhi should hand over his phone for testing, and others. I agree. But then Vaishnav should also hand over his phone. Others should also. BJP ministers should also hand over their phone. I think that's the only way we can actually find the truth. So the government should move forward to determine the truth. That's my limited point.
Yes, okay. In fact, let me take that point across to Tuhin Sinha. There's also the key question we are asking one more time tonight, Tuhin. Why is our government not ordering probe? And as we speak, there is news coming in by AFP that Hungary prosecutors have also opened probe into claims that the government used Pegasus spyware to target phone numbers. So this is the third country now that has opened an investigation. Why are we so averse to it?
The Pegasus fiasco, at least in the Indian context, has been a fishing expedition so far. And there are reasons for it. In fact, I heard Benno quoting the Israeli journalist. The Israeli journalist himself seems very confused, because one part of that tweet very specifically says NSO's co-founder and CEO, Shelo Lilo, responded to allegations about Pegasus project by saying the list of 50,000 phone numbers has nothing to do with us. If you take NSO's entire history, you won't reach 50,000 Pegasus targets since the company was founded. So, there are a lot of, the entire set of allegations so far has been in the realm of speculation. Now, in the last 3 days, do we know even the basic have phones been hacked? We don't know. In fact, I don't think even the wire knows. Who ordered the hack? No idea. Where did the phone numbers come from? No idea. Did the investigative story give any evidence to suggest who could be behind it? No. So I think, I'll give you an example. When the Congress first started leveling allegations on Rafale and saying that, Chaukidar chor hai, I had to educate many of the Congress spokespersons on what offset partner really means. So I think if Wire does a little more groundwork, it will form the basis of investigation. And today, when the Honorable Minister Ashwini Vaishnavji was making a speech in Parliament on the same issue, you saw how the opposition members behaved. So I think, this entire thing as of today, in the last 3 days, has been a fishing expedition. With a little more information, one would have a direction for investigation. We have not ruled out, ordering an investigation or inquiry into it.
But, Tuhin, the questions you have in that you just listed out are exactly the questions that we need answers to. Why an investigation? Whether the basics of this, whether who ordered it? Where did it come from? Who was behind it? Whose list is it? Is it all 50,000? Is it just 25,000? Is it only 10,000? Is it the governments of those nations or the rival enemy nations of those nations? Is it private institutions? I can actually add to the list of questions that you have. I have many more. We will only know the truth if there is an official, full-fledged, high-level investigation. That is not necessarily the job of the media.
No, so as of today, allegations have been leveled in the Indian context. The Pegasus problem may have existed in, there may be more evidence in other countries to initiate a probe. But, it seems that the Wire and some selected media have used the international problem to piggyback on the crisis and make a case for India where certainly does not seem to be a case. That is my point.
Tanvi, we have tested our phones to be Pegasus positive. That is a fact, right? That is a fact.
Yeah, it entirely seems a figment of somebody's imagination.
Yes.
Somebody has tried to piggyback on the international crisis and create a case for it in India.
I mean, here is the founding editor of the news portal organization that has done these stories, investigative stories, and he's saying to you, my phone is Pegasus positive. Now, how much more do you need? That's the whole question. And let me, in fact, bring in one more. Let me bring in one more voice. Mr. Jagdeep Chokar. Mr. Jagdeep Chokar, did you know before you read these stories emerge? Did you manage to have a conversation with Bio when they were investigating? Have you given your phone for investigation? Because we understand your name is also on this list of potential targets.
Well, I also understand my name is on the list. I have not given my phone to anybody for investigation, nor have I been asked to give my phone for investigation. All I know is that I happen to be on the list. I am actually very surprised because I don't know whether anything that I do is worth the time, effort, and money that seems to have gone in reportedly. Now, as I was informed by a couple of the media things, because in some countries also there is a requirement that you first seek permission from the person whom you are going to name. So I knew this about a few days before the report came out, but I was very surprised, and I continue to feel that the people who have done this have not done their homework properly. They could have used those resources and money that they spent on apparently putting my phone under surveillance. They could have used it for a much better purpose.
Well, Mr. Chokar, you're being far too humble tonight. You know exactly the kind of great work for accountability and transparency that you've been doing. You've been taking on the biggest of the names for on political parties and donors to these parties via your campaign against electoral bonds and so much more that you've done. So I'm sure you're not. I mean, if you sit and think about the work that you've done, there may be much that other people want to know what you're up to.
You asked me a specific question and I responded to that. But beyond that,
yes,
let me think that there is something going on. I don't know what is going on, and it seems to be going on across the world. Therefore, to say that this is some harebrained people in India have managed to persuade people in other countries to go along with this, I think is unlikely. And even if that is so, it is better to get everything out in the open. One thing that I find a little surprising is, why can't the government say whether they bought Pegasus from NSO or not? This is, to my mind, there is no big national secret involved here. And the moment they say they have not bought it, then at least one part of the story will be over. Then maybe people will start looking for who bought it and who did it. But then we can keep doing that. But the government should not hesitate in sharing with people whether they bought Pegasus from NSO or not. That I am not able to understand that.
Okay, that is a very fair point that you've raised. But let me just bring in Deshratan Nigam and then Tuhin can respond to these. Mr. Nigam, if the government doesn't order an investigation and hold a fair probe into something which is so huge and the scale of which is so huge, then where do the citizens go? Where does the common man go to find some support in the light of allegations of attempts to hack into their phones?
Tanvi, these are some the valid questions, and let me answer one by one. I agree with Tuhin that evidence in India has to be seen, not what is happening in France or Hungary or Israel. That is one thing. And secondly, the evidence which is so-called evidence which is available is no evidence in the eyes of law, even otherwise. Now, these are unverifiable, no independent third-party corroboration. And if Mr. Venu was so aggrieved, he could have filed a police complaint and surrendered his phone, which he has not done so till now. And with all the evidences he has, we don't have the original raw list so that it can be said that certain phone numbers were leaked from it. It should be submitted for technical inquiry and technical verification. It is not even there in public domain. Secondly, let me also point out, the amnesty says these are potential targets, which itself means it is in future tense, it has not been snooped upon. You don't use the word potential target for an event of the past from 2017 to 2019. You don't use the word potential target for an event of the past, which you say you've already snooped upon. So what they are saying is it is a potential. They're not saying snooping has been done. And secondly, they also add, in fact, the wire also admits mere presence of the phone number does not mean the phone has been infected or hacked. And secondly, let me tell you, today you are living in a world where your phone can be hacked from anywhere in the world. And we have known Chinese attacking the phones through their technologies. And in fact, the Maharashtra government's, grid was also attacked and it was disturbed. So even I presume for the sake of argument that what Mr. Venu is saying is correct, although I'm denying it, it remains to be seen that whether his phone was infected from third country, for Hungary, for France, where they have started investigation, and France has done it on the basis of a police complaint that has been filed. And none of these people are filing the police complaint because there are consequences of filing a false case. Because there are punishment for false cases. They don't want to take that responsibility upon themselves, create a lot of, brahua and halla bulla on the media, but they are not going to take the steps as they are supposed to as a responsible citizen. Please go and file a complaint with the evidences that you have.
Deshratan, tell me how many false sedition cases
I just want to
UP
say that
government filed
exactly the
against
point that
editors?
you made. It should be submitted for technical inquiry and verification. Who's going to do that technical inquiry and verification? Individuals who pull out the list from the internet?
File a police complaint.
Today, Tanvi,
everything starts from there.
Tanvi,
may I come in?
They have technical
Mr. M.K. Venu. Yes, Mr. M.K. Venu.
So to answer Deshratan Nigam, we are still not finished with putting out all the stories. The last two installments are coming today and tomorrow. After that, today we had a meeting in the press club. Press club has passed a resolution along with Editors Guild and other media organizations that if the government does not institute a credible inquiry, all these media organizations will explore other legal and constitutional options. So you just be patient. That will also happen.
That's the first option. Right? That's the first option that you have, and you have not exercised in 3-4 days.
By the way, I must tell Deshratan.
I don't think the point is whether an individual should go to court or should go to the police and fight this case. Whether they have the wherewithal, the bandwidth to fight it, to take it to the end, when you know on the other side, anybody, if at all, is using Pegasus is going to be somebody of mighty power and deep pockets. Needs to be thought about. Now, individuals may decide to do it. The point of the conversation is why is the government hesitant to do it? Nobody tonight, including those who have filed these stories, and MK who is sitting here, nobody here tonight is saying that the current government of our country has put together this potential target list or attempted to carry out surveillance. But somebody has, Mr. Sapal, somebody perhaps did make this list. Somebody did have that intention. This list also has not only journalists, but also politicians, not only from your party, but our current minister, who at that time was not a minister. Other MOS, aides of sitting ministers and chief ministers and deputy chief ministers. How can a country turn a blind eye to those kind of details and say, no, let an individual fight their own battle? Mr. Sapal.
Tanvi, I completely agree with you. I am amused by the replies given by Mr. Tuhin and Mr. Deshwatan Nigam. You see, suppose, let's assume that BJP or its government did not do this espionage. Let's assume that. But then the Chief Justice of India's office was bugged. The cabinet ministers were bugged. The election commission was bugged. Sitting chief ministers were bugged. Journalist and the leader of the opposition party was bugged. So it's a huge internal security issue. Your entire internal security apparatus is at stake. And this government is responsible for the security of this nation. It is sitting idle and waiting for somebody to file a FIR. The government's responsibility is to ensure that there's no breach in the security apparatus. There's no breach in the judiciary, in the election commission. And what is the government doing? You see, when this story broke, Tanvi, it was, I think, at 3:30, 3:20, 3:25. And 3:30, it rushed with a statement in the parliament. That same statement was repeated today by the IT minister. And that statement itself, without doing any investigation at the government level, they were ready with a denial, as if they knew everything, and the denial is only pro forma. And they say that this is to defame India. Today, Israel has instituted a senior ministerial inquiry. Israel is the ideological fatherland of BJP RSS. Now, is Israel also against BJP? Israel is also defaming India and doing it. Let us understand what they are implying at. This statement of the minister said, I'll read out, without subjecting a phone to this technical analysis, this is not possible to conclusively state whether it witnessed an attempted hack or was successfully compromised. This statement was picked up from Wire's copy, from Wire's report. But very conveniently, the government edited out the first part of the statement, which clearly said forensic test conducted as part of this project on a small cross-section of phones revealed clear signs of targeting by Pegasus. The government, it picks up one statement from the report and tries to establish a case that no testing has been done. What is government there trying to hide? It's a national internal security matter. And why is Home Minister not replying it? What has IT Minister got to do with it? This is not a policy matter. Somebody bought a software. Do you know the price of the software? It is $80 million to espionage 10 mobile phones. $80 million. No private individual can have that amount of money. And if somebody is investing that amount of money in spying in India, then what is this government doing? Can't government track that person or an organization which is investing so much money? So this is not a case of what BJP says or what Congress says or what the journalists are saying. It's a case of internal security. Very clearly, the Home Minister is responsible for it. He should come to Parliament and reply. The entire defense of BJP is deniability. That we did not do it. Okay, you did not do it. Somebody did it.
Yeah, but Mr. Sapal, the government is saying there is no evidence. This whole controversy, similar one broke out in 2019 when WhatsApp said it. Not even media organizations that you would doubt it. WhatsApp said it. The government said, oh, we're going to look into it. We'll ask WhatsApp to tell us, give us more details, this, that, everything. Even the parliamentary panel that is headed by your party leader said, we're going to listen to everybody and we're going to look into this. This is about people's rights and people's privacy. What came out of it? Nothing came out of it.
Yes.
So if 2 years ago nothing came out of it, and for 2 years everybody forgot about it, what makes you think the government will do it now?
No, Tanvi, nobody forgot about it. Let me tell you, the government asked WhatsApp to give those numbers. WhatsApp gave 113 numbers to government. CERT did an inquiry investigation into it. It gave a report that there was a security breach. Then WhatsApp went to the court in California, international court. The company which makes Pegasus, NSO, there was a case against that company in California court by WhatsApp Facebook, Google, and the Association of Internet. And the NSO said there that we only sell it to the sovereign nations, so we cannot be tried in a court. And in July itself, the court gave an interim order that NSO company can be, there can be trial against this company because there has been enough evidence of misuse of this. And today, the CEO himself said that if there is a misuse, we are trying to investigate it, and if found true, we'll put a ban on Pegasus. This is not what Congress party or the journalist or the wire is saying in India. This is the international. For last 2 years, the case is being pursued at various international levels. There was a independent study published by Washington Post which proved that in the Bhima Koregaon case, Pegasus virus was used to plant fake proof against those people who have been arrested in that case. So it is not that people have been silent. It's a complicated thing, and the government is in complete deniability. It does not carry out any investigation. It was not worried. 113 phones were spied upon in 2019 at the rate of $80 million per 10 phone. It is $800 million. Government was not worried about from where this money came. It never did its investigation in the last 2 years. It never did anything, and now they are saying there is no proof. How did you arrive at a conclusion that there is no proof? Can government put it up in the public domain? Can it call senior political leaders in the parliament? If it's a national security matter, you don't want to discuss it in a public platform. The rules provide that there can be a secret meeting, a confidential meeting called by either a home minister or prime minister or any other minister, and senior parliamentarians can be called to that meeting. The entire thing can be shared with them. The government is not doing that. There are ways to satisfy the nation that government has not ordered this inquiry or this is not an illegal espionage. There are ways, but government is in a complete deniability mode.
Okay. So let me bring in Tuhin Sinha now. Tuhin, even the responses right now have been so circumventing and evasive of the actual points that MK Venu, Congress Party, many others are wondering what the true facts are. We don't know if what government found or did not find in 2019 to dismiss it all out. Those details are not available. We still don't know if we officially use Pegasus, not use Pegasus, have we bought it, at what point did we buy it, and do we still use it? We don't know even now. Then what investigation did you do this time to outright dismiss it?
Basic knowledge that, to initiate an inquiry, the first thing anybody should ideally do, even if, crime is known or crime is assumed, is to file an FIR. Now, I know why the wire won't do it. The wire has a history of for which it has been pursued legally. You can check, the number of times they have been pursued for, they have been,
no,
legal
the government can order an investigation.
Let me come.
Police FIR is one option, Tuhin. The government can always order an investigation, bringing the most premier of its investigative agencies, the biggest of the experts to look into this. What's stopping the government for setting up a special panel?
Tuhin, can I reply to you for a minute?
Credibility of spreading fake news, the government does not take that.
Just 1 minute, let Tuhin answer this.
This is the internal security matter, Tuhin. Government cannot wait for an FIR to ensure the security of nation.
60 seconds, after which you can respond, Mr. Suppal. Give me 60 seconds. Let me, respond to. So I heard Mr. Venu says he's waiting for 2 more rounds of investigative stories which he's going to bring out, and then he will consider filing an FIR. So shouldn't he wait for that amount of time before demanding an investigation from the government? Ideally, yes.
No,
but then,
how does it matter whether the wire has a lot more stories to do, or at what point does Mr. MK Venu decide if he wants to file an FIR? The question is very simple. Why is the government not interested in knowing why the numbers of the biggest of the politicians, sitting ministers, their deputies, their cooks and their gardeners, everybody's numbers were on this list?
Categorically that if at all any spying under the mandated provisions of Section 5 of the Indian Telegraph Act, that should be the end of the matter. Which clearly means that there is no, spying of the kind which the wires of the world want us to believe. And let me go a step further. The government will not spend the kind of obnoxious amount on spying Rahul Gandhi. If at all Rahul Gandhi has been spied upon, the answer lies in the 2008 MOU, mysterious MOU that Congress party signed with CCP in China. The government will not spend that kind of obnoxious amount on spying on Rahul Gandhi. We all know what he's up to.
I think I should react to this.
Why? Is he not a citizen of this country, just like the other 300 people?
Let me respond to this specific charge.
Let him take
Okay, one by one. Yes, Mr. Sapal first, and then I'll go to MK Venu.
Yeah. First, about this political charge, Mr. Tuhin doesn't know. In 2014, his party members went to China for political training from Chinese Communist Party. Just Google it today. All your viewers can Google it; they'll get the answer. So don't try to divert the issue. Issue is who is ruling the country today? Who is in government? It's your party which is in the government. Are you certain sure that there's been no espionage in the military setup? There has been in Supreme Court, there has been in Election Commission, there has been in Cabinet, there has been in state government. Are you completely sure? On what basis have you arrived at this conclusion? And this is not simple phone tapping. This is taking control of the phone and using it to listen, to see. The cameras can be turned on. It can be used as a listening device, not just the telephonic conversation. It can be used to plant any material in your phone. It can be used to take any documents from your phone. Are you so sure that there has been no breach in the military setup of this country? What form of government are you running? Before saying no, please investigate. Please investigate and say no. We'll be with you. But you are not investigating. Within 5 minutes of a story breaking out, you come out with a statement which is wrongly worded, which misleads the country, saying that this is only to defame India. What has Rwanda got to do with its espionage? Rwanda is spying on its people to defame India. France instituting an investigation to defame India, or Israel doing it to defame India. Don't be so sensitive. We are responsible political party which is there.
Okay. Yes, Tuhin.
Right now, we are completely competent in handling any spying which may be taking place against the defense establishment. All details need not be provided because these are sensitive matters. All we are saying is that the story which has been broken out by Wire at this point of time needs to be taken with a pinch of salt. Let them come out with more evidence. Like I said, even the basics have not been established.
Why should Wire come out? Why shouldn't government find it out? That's our question. We know you could not find out till date who planted RDX in Pulwama. You don't. You're talking of those things. I can come to those also. So, but let's restrict ourselves to this issue. Why doesn't government be proactive in telling this nation?
Okay, I want to again take a step back. Request everybody to take a step back and really put it in perspective for everyone. And maybe the decision makers and the highest of the powers in our country are also missing this perspective. Mr. Venu, the point that you made at the beginning, the point that this is a larger global story that is unfolding, use of such softwares and the intentions which needs to be looked into. It could also be a client of NSO, which is not our country, but wants to spy on the people of our country.
Yeah, Tanvi, I'm again sincerely, my submission is, this is not about the Wire or Siddharth Vadrajan or Venu or some Prashant Kishore or another six people whose telephone has been found to be infected by Pegasus versus the government or people, opposition versus the government. It's not that. Please understand, this is a global problem, and as again I'm saying, Prime Minister Modi should become part of a solution to this problem. This is and as Deshnathan Nigam, he said the right thing. I take at face value that the government has not done it. Mr. Deshnathan Nigam said, suppose some enemy country has done it. So then, if that is the case, it's a national security issue. Tanvi, it's not about Venu or some few journalists or a few opposition leaders. It's not about that. We have to find out if it's an enemy government. Then how is it happening? Who's brought in Pegasus? And then you have to question NSO also, which people have started doing. NSO has issued a statement yesterday, the company, admitting that their Pegasus supply to governments has led to human rights violation. They have admitted in so many words, and they've said that some sort of regulatory mechanism needs to be brought into. They've not mentioned any countries, and the Israeli government will also come under pressure. So I'm saying that Indian government can become part of a global effort. This is not about some government versus opposition or journalists versus the government. Please, I'm looking at the big picture.
I'll just add.
Mr. Jagdeep Chokar, I want you to come in on this as well. As somebody who always fights for more accountability and transparency in our democratic system, is there really any other way? Do you think it has to be left to individuals to go and file a police complaint and for a local police Thana person to start investigating such a large-scale global, highly sophisticated, as even tech giants put it, highly sophisticated surveillance system?
Should start with a clean slate. I do not even believe NSO when it says that it says only to governments or government agencies. I do not believe it says it to governments vetted by the Israeli government. We don't know that. All we know is there seems to be something which has happened over the last few years in which Indian citizens are involved, Indian officials may be involved, Indian politicians may be involved. Whether it has been done, the question of the government doing it, governments have been doing this kind of thing forever. Let us not be innocent about it. Government did it earlier on also. I remember when landline telephone used to be hacked. But the point is, in this case, there is apparently a foreign agency involved. Now, whether there is proof or not, this has to be established. It is as important that proof is established that it is not, the government is not involved. There is a saying that Caesar's wife has to be above suspicion. And therefore, I think it is appropriate that the matter be investigated by obviously and visibly independent body. I am actually not in favor of what Shashi Tharoor said today, that my committee will investigate and there is no need for a JPC. Let the parliament decide what it wants to do. But ultimately, when it comes to the question of an individual filing an FIR, I personally don't believe it is a FIR type of case. I think it has to have more significant and serious attention, and maybe some person might go to the court. I don't know, but I think the government cannot, and I agree that Mr. Nigam and the other gentlemen are not the representatives of the government. So what they say is on behalf of some other body which supports one particular view. So I think it is incumbent on the government to first of all come out with this, whether the government of India bought Pegasus or not. To me, that is a very simple question, and that unless that is answered categorically, at least I would continue to be concerned. Although I agree that there could be multiple things, we don't know what is going on. It is actually like COVID, and we don't know what is going on. Something or the other keeps coming up. So this is also that situation, but it is not which requires 10 years or 20 years of study of the impact of the virus. This, I think the government can investigate in a open, transparent, visibly transparent, demonstratively transparent way. Unless otherwise it will continue. We have many such issues, There has been before, there is now Rafael, there was St. Kitts, and there were all kinds of things. We live with all this. But I think it is not fair to the country at large to be under this shadow, however flimsy it may be. I think I will again repeat, Caesar's wife has to be above suspicion, and the government must first say whether they bought Pegasus or not. And if they don't say this, then everybody will, at least I will continue to wonder what happened. And investigation by a kind of a completely independent entity is called for.
Can I come in, Tanvi?
So I just wanted to ask Mr. Deshratan Nigam again. I understand that you're saying that the individuals are free to, legally they have a recourse there. But what is your argument again, Mr. Nigam, to say that the government shouldn't look into it?
See, let me be very clear. This is a crime under Indian Penal Code as well as the IT Act. Very clear. And therefore, it has to go through police investigation and police has to register a crime. There are no two views about it. Secondly, the present evidence which is available in public domain, I don't know if Mr. Venu has some hidden evidence. This is no evidence in law, and law does not permit phishing inquiry. We are very clear in law that phishing inquiries cannot be permitted. And that's also the law is very clear. So let Mr. Venu, after collecting all kinds of evidence, initiate an action. And there is a specialized cell, cybercrime cell of Delhi police or in fact, the central government, they will look into it. But as of now, there is no evidence available which can be prosecuted. And it is India specific. I'm not going into global. These are country specific laws and country specific allegations. And each country has to act accordingly.
Then, so Tanvi, I'd like to correct Deshratan here. 10 Indian phones have been tested to be Pegasus infected. I think that prima facie that constitutes some evidence. Of course, it has to be taken to the police or court. That I agree with him on that. Yeah.
You know, after the show, you should straight
May I come in?
to the cyber cell and register an FIR without delay if you are convinced about it. But given your
May I come in?
FIR, I would take this with a pinch of salt.
Yes.
May I come in? There is this
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Sapal. Yes.
Yeah, there is this attempt by BJP and its supporters to reduce this entire thing into an infringement of IT Act. What we are saying is this is not a simple case of infringement of IT Act. It's a case of a breach in internal security. Why is it so difficult to understand that the Chief Justice of India's office has been infiltrated? What is the relationship between the judgments that he gave, especially in Rafael and this espionage? What is the relationship between Lavasa's stand in election commission in 2019 election and this espionage? What is the relationship between the toppling of government in Karnataka and using spyware against the CM, deputy CM and former CM? What is the relationship between this espionage and the two ministers in the Modi cabinet? So this is not a simple matter of infringement of IT Act, which is the attempt is to basically show it as a very normal little exercise. Why is this entire world agitated about it? It's about the transparency, it's about the privacy, it's also about the fundamental right. 2017, Dr. Swami judgment has said the privacy is a fundamental right. Who will defend that fundamental right of citizens? Who will defend the fundamental right of MK Venu? It is the government of India. Why are you asking somebody A, B, C to go to police and then say my rights have been violated? Why are you expecting somebody to go to court and say that India's national security has been compromised? This is a more severe thing. Let us understand.
Let me answer
if
Mr.
BJP
Sapal.
has not done it, if Modi government has not done it, then please advise your party to come up front, join hands with everyone and let's investigate. We are giving you benefit of doubt that you have not done it. But if you have not done it, then please join hands with everyone. There have been JPCs in past on various issues. There have been collective investigations on such issues. Please, why are you taking a stand that nothing has happened? You have not investigated. The government has not investigated. This is dereliction of duty by the government. The governments are not run like this.
Can I come in?
And let me just point out, please, why it is so important. Again, it's not about one individual or two individuals. Yes, just coming to you. It's not just about one individual or two individuals or who that individual is, whether it's MK Venu or Prashant Kishore and Rahul Gandhi, and hence maybe we don't want to care about it. It's about what can happen. if you look at the global reportage, the sense that one gets is that these spywares are out there that can be used against citizens of any country. And what are they used again for? They're not just used to say, okay, it's, an individual would just assume it is to say, oh, they're listening into my conversations or they're reading my text messages. Yes, they're listening to your conversations. They could be listening to read. They could be reading your text messages. They could be watching you because they have access to your phone cameras now. They could be reading your emails. They could be looking at everything which is there on your phone. They could be tracking your location every single time when you move from one to the other, where you go. Even when you're not using your phone, they can hear you, see you, everything. They can also plant information, plant evidence in your phone. That's how highly sophisticated these spywares are. That is why they are so dangerous, which is why any government should be concerned that twice in 3 years now, this kind of a story has emerged. Once by a global network of journalists, once by one of the biggest software tech giants that we have in the world, who right now, as we speak, are also embroiled in a legal battle with NSO. So the story has gone on since 2019, and the threats are just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and more people will be vulnerable to it. So I fail to understand, Tuhin Sinha, why the government doesn't care about us.
You know, I have been hearing, why does the government not specify that it has not purchased Pegasus? When the government on the floor of the House says that if at all any spying has happened, it is under the mandated provisions, the answer is self-explanatory. You know, the problem is the Congress just doesn't get it. So number one, we have not used Pegasus. That is a fact which has been clearly stated when we say that whatever spying has taken place, it is in the existing, as per the existing provisions of Section 5 of Indian Telegraph Act. Now, I repeat.
So you could use Pegasus legitimately. Who says you can't use Pegasus legitimately?
Sorry?
Please say it that you have purchased it. The government has purchased it.
Who says you can't use Pegasus legitimately? You can use it legally or illegally.
Pegasus, you know, when we, the entire Section 5 of Indian Telegraph Act requires certain provisions to be followed. And Pegasus is a different entity altogether. So, you know, I don't know how many times the Congress needs to be explained simple basics, which you've seen in the. We have not used Pegasus.
To him that the government has purchased it. Please say it in as many words.
No. Now coming to why the investigation is not being ordered, I have said this before. Given the credibility of the wire, we will wait for more, more evidence to come forth, because as Desh Ratan ji has very clearly explained, what is available with the wire right now does not constitute evidence, and in law we have no scope for fishing or roving inquiry. Isn't this what the Supreme Court had said to the Congress on a previous charge? Now, third point is, I repeat.
I don't know what you mean by given the credibility of a media organization. I didn't know that the government actually judges stories basis who is reporting it, not basis what can be the impact of those stories and what is the evidence that this story really gives or shows. And when the claim is that they have investigated and found traces of Pegasus in phones right now, I don't know where this doubt over credibility comes. Quick comment from Desh Ratan Nigam. Yes, go ahead, please.
You know, Tanvi,
immediately after your show, I would go to the cyber cell and report the matter. If you say this with such certainty, what is stopping you from initiating the next step?
Because you are in the government, it's your duty.
Okay, now we're just going in circles by asking that question and again. Yes, Mr. Desh Ratan Nigam, please.
Tanvi, let me tell you, as somebody who was a science student and somebody who's also a political analyst and a lawyer, government should not say what software it has purchased and what it has not purchased, because it will be open to attacks, cyber attacks, and the weaknesses can come out in the open. So I'm not for the government to tell you which software it is operating, which is not operating. This will compromise national security and internal security, and that would be a very serious issue. Now, so far as fundamental right issue is concerned, Let me tell you, as a lawyer, if somebody comes to me whose fundamental rights are violated, first thing we do is file a writ petition in the Delhi High Court to protect his fundamental rights or legal rights. That options are open for the Mr. Venu, and he can surely exercise it, all those options. And even then, you know what the court will do? Court will direct under the provisions of law.
I agree with you, and that
police
option
to
is there.
investigate.
Anybody can use it. Jagdeep Chokar can use it. Mr. M.K. Venu can use it. Rahul Gandhi can use it. And even Prashant Kishore can use it, and anybody else whose name is there on the list. My point is not that. There can be this much and a lot more that is not known. As the government who's been elected to power, voted to power to look out for the interests of its citizens, when the story emerges that a larger number of people may have been targets of potential surveillance, I believe it is the government's responsibility as well, especially when these names comes from segments of constitutional posts, sitting ministers, big politicians, big activists, big champions of transparency, accountability and human rights, and journalists. It is, I believe, the responsibility of the government to stand up for each and every citizen of this country, whether those citizens are journalists or of any other profession, whether those citizens follow your ideology or don't follow your ideology, whether those citizens are critical of you or are completely backing of you. All of that doesn't matter. What matters at the end of the day, that there is a very, very strong possibility and evidence available that attempts were being made to spy on Indian citizens. And as the elected government of this country, we hope that the government makes an attempt to find out who was behind it. That's what we want to know. Did this happen and who was behind it? Completely out of time. Thank you so much for joining us.